Welcome to the best of 5 matches for the Legacy Premier League. I'm joined. My name's Anurag, and I'm here joined with Philip Gallagher. Today, we're going to see a couple of. I believe this is the losers bracket, right? We have Jarvis, Michael Bonde, we have Jody Keith, and we also have Brian Braun duking it out with just the best of 5 matches. So the way it's going to work is each player is going to bring 3 decks to the table, and it's going to be an Iron Man style event where the first person to lose a match with each of their decks is knocked out. So it's going to be pretty exciting. I'm pretty sure we're going to see a diverse portfolio of decks from each of the players. Phil, how are you feeling about this today?
I'm really excited about this because a lot of times as Legacy players, we get these reputations, rightfully so, as deck specialists, but many of us actually have much greater ranges than what you might imagine. So today you're going to get to see the other side of some great Legacy players, and that's why I'm the most excited.
Yeah, no, it's a good point that you bring up. I mean, so I know, Jarvis, for example, everyone used to think about him as, the lands guy forever. But, having spent so much time with Jarvis, it's just incredible the amount of depth. Just having played Magic for so long, he's pretty much played with every single card almost that exists. And it'll be exciting to see, players of these high calibers sort of just explore avenues that we haven't seen before. So let's go ahead and dive into a couple of the first few deck lists. Match 1 from Jarvis's side, I think, is Grixis Delver.
All right, let's take a look at that deck list then.
And this is a very interesting list. So we're all very familiar with Grixis Delver. After the ban list, doesn't have Deathrite Shaman or Gitaxian Probe anymore. It's your typical Delver Days Wasteland strategy. Phil, do you see anything interesting here? Any metagaming that Jarvis may have done?
So, when I've been talking with Jarvis in some group chats recently, he said that a lot of times when he plays a Grixis Delver deck, he plays it a little bit bigger than a lot of other people. So I'm not surprised to see 2 main deck True Name Nemesis. And in other versions, I've seen him post a main deck Bitter Blossom, I think. So I'm not too surprised to see just going up a step higher rather than playing something smaller like Bomat Courier that's maybe less impactful on some boards.
Gotcha. And if we look at the sideboard too, we see 2 copies of Liliana the Last Hope and then that 1 copy of Snapcaster's Mage. So that sort of embodies the whole Jarvis philosophy of just going big. And actually, now that I think about it, this reminds me back to the days of 4-color Delver, which I know Jarvis did play to a degree, which also had that sort of, big booty theme. One thing that I do like about this list that I don't think is quite ordinary or stock is 3 copies of Preordain. So after Deathrite Shaman and Gitaxian Probe, got the axe, there's this huge void in these Grixis, these Delver decks. And I really, really like that he's filling with cantrips that, give him the sort of filtration in the mid-game-ish or whatever that help transition to a late game where you can use bolts and True Names and whatnot to win the game. And then I think one thing I see is Grim Lavamancer. How do you feel about that card?
So actually, I was going to add to your point and say that adding more cantrips makes sense once you're also adding in the Grim Lavamancers. And I think replacing some of Deathrite Shaman's graveyard-based utility with another graveyard-based threat makes a lot of sense. I'm super annoyed to see Grim Lavamancer on the other side of the battlefield as a D&T player because it's so good at just controlling a game while your secondary threat just pecks to death. Because your opponent has a Delver and then Grim Lavamancer keeps your stuff in check. You're just dying.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how Jarvis has sort of tuned this to whatever predicted metagame he has. And so let's take a look at Michael Bonde's list and see what he's playing today in round 1. Uh-oh.
Oh no. Chat, this is not what you expected if I were to guess. Our good friend here, Champion of Justice D&T player Michael Bonde, he's played a lot of D&T. He's been playing some elves recently. I don't think I've ever seen him play Reanimator before.
Yeah, so tell me about this deck a little bit.
So for anyone just sort of unfamiliar with this deck, Red-Black Reanimator tries to poop a creature into play on turn 1 if at all possible. Some of your best openers involve Dark Ritual, Entomb into a reanimation spell. Then you draw 14 cards with Grizzlebrand and try to put more creatures into play or unmask your opponent into oblivion.
Yeah, I know this is one of the, I think going into the GP and even in the Pro Tour, this was one of the most feared decks, just because, you know, that's what Deathright Shaman being banned. People were hypothesizing that Reanimator would just, you know, go completely unchecked. I think this strategy is extremely powerful. If you look at the leaderboard on Magic Online, you have Eric Landon with some absurd amount of trophies, and he's been consistently overperforming with this deck. In fact, you can see a lot of the innovations in this specific list probably taken from him. Like, you know, the Cabal Therapy is probably the number one most powerful innovation, I think. It's just absurd being able to tag multiple counter spells or just flashback your creatures and then like reanimate them. That's a cool synergy with Ashen Rider. And
so actually, one of my favorite things about the EW Landon lists, generally speaking, is that they have very good post-sideboard plans. So, for example, in the previous metagame, he ran Magus of the Moon to just like completely get free wins. And now he's taken a different approach to sort of attacking from a different angle and ignoring Graveyard Hate in Crypt Breaker, Legacy All-Star.
Yeah, very interesting. I remember someone was telling me, I think Bed was telling me that he played against Black Red at their last Grand Prix, and he had an ensnaring bridge out, and his opponent couldn't attack with like Gristlebrand and Iona and whatever, but it was literally a 2-1 Crypt Breaker that was just making zombies and turning sideways, and it was just like I mean, that card, like, I really, really appreciate like the whole adding an element of resilience to this like fragile combo deck. I mean, because we definitely agree that Black Red is very like glass cannon sort of deck. Giving it the capacity to sideboard into like resilient threats that, you know, your opponent might completely be blindsided by is just like a brilliant, brilliant strategy. I think the reason Eric stopped playing Magus of the Moon and Grim Lavamancer originally was because he just started winning so much that it wasn't a secret anymore. But now, like, you know, with the meta shift, Deathright Shaman being gone, like, you know, Magus of the Moon's potency is a lot less. But that being said, this is going to be a close matchup. Phil, who do you think is going to win in the pre-board game and the post-board game?
So, I think in the pre-board game, I'm gonna be voting for Bonde. Is Bonde? I keep hearing everyone say it differently. Do you know?
I just say Bonde. Yeah. Oh, Bonde. Okay, Bonde. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm voting for Bonde, and I feel like in the post-board game, once Jarvis is going to have access to surgicals, that there's going to be a much better chance for him to go and win these games.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, actually, Jarvis said that he doesn't have any surgicals in his post-board list, so I'm actually inclined to. Yeah, it's pretty big. So I'm inclined to give Bonde the game 1 and the game 2.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, I just like Snap assumed that those surgicals were going to be in there. They're always in there. That is not true. Yeah, I take it back.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into the first game and see who takes the first one.
That's a
hilarious snippet. Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, game 1, 7 cards. I'm looking at Jarvis's hand. It looks like he's going to keep this hand. I mean, early interaction, Grim Lavamancer is a nice threat to play on turn 1. You also have Thoughtseize and, you know, even selection in Preordain. What about? It looks like Bonde is also keeping.
Yeah, his hand is disgusting. He's going to get to like Faithless Looting, bin the Chancellor, whatever Jarvis's first spell is, it's going to eat it to the Chancellor trigger, and then turn 2, he'll get to go Dark Ritual into Animate Dead or Reanimate.
Oh man, that's pretty filthy. Like a turn 1 Chancellor of the Annex is a very powerful, against a certain subset of decks, I think it's just good. Mostly because it just like slows the opponent down so much, and you just attack in the air for like 4 turns or something like that. And you can see here Jarvis is burning his turn 1 Thoughtseize to get rid of the original Chancellor trigger.
All right, so note that you see the Dark Ritual here, even though it's not necessary to cast it. Casting it can allow him to play around something like Daze, while also allowing him to go and cast a second 2-mana spell here.
Correct.
So it's going to look like this is wasted, but it's not a waste.
Correct. And I think the general principle behind Black-Red Reanimator is so long as you can get one creature on the board, you are going to win the game. So here it's okay to just go all in sort of and waste in quotes the Dark Ritual as to get the Chancellor into play.
So this is a rough series of draws from Jarvis here. Seeing like double Wasteland on top is pretty rough.
Right.
Of note, I do think on turn 1, Jarvis should have potentially thrown away Grim Lavamancer instead of his Thoughtseize.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's probably pretty minor given the way that this game is going to probably play out.
Right.
But food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I feel like it could go either way. I mean, maybe... I'm not really sure. The Thoughtseize might not do anything because like the Black-Red deck will put everything into, whoa, okay, that was some fun stuff.
So
pretty snazzy use of Reanimate.
One thing you have to keep in mind when you're playing against Reanimator is that your threats can become their threats. And I lost a couple of games to just like reanimate your Mother of Runes. Now my Grizzlebrand is protected.
I think that's also some of the thoughts that blue-black shadow players use in playing the card Reanimate. But let's take a look at sideboarding. Looks like both players are going at it. Hit me, Phil. What are we looking at from both sides of the table?
Okay, so on Jarvis's side, as we already mentioned, he doesn't have the surgical extractions. So a lot of his sideboard cards are really mediocre here. Like he'll get a Flusterstorm, he'll probably bring in an Edict, another Thoughtseize, maybe a Snapcaster to flash some of that stuff back, but there's not too much to be done here.
Yeah, I'm not knowing that there aren't any surgical extractions in the sideboard for Jarvis. I feel like the exact same thing is going to happen in game 1, where we might bin one creature and then just like slog through reanimation spells to resolve them all. But I mean, Jarvis is also very good at the game, so maybe he's just going to crush Bonde without us even realizing it. How about on the other side of the table?
So we know Jarvis doesn't have surgicals. Our Reanimator player does not know that, though. So he probably needs to hedge against that a little bit in sort of making his decisions. So a lot of time in the whole game for Reanimator is figuring out how your opponent is going to go and sideboard. And like trying to go and beat that. All right, but we're already into the next match.
Yeah, and turn 1 Delver of Secrets. If you're going to win this game, you need the kind of hand that Jarvis just peeled. It's got way too much early interaction, which is like really, really good, obviously. We have Day, Spell Pierce, and Flusterstorm, and Bonde is going to keep a somewhat slower hand, leading with the turn 1 Thoughtseize to sort of penetrate that counterwall force field.
Yeah, it's a start, but there's still 2 more spells backing up this Delver, and even if the Delver doesn't blind flip for a couple of turns, it's not the end of the world, because we're going to get like a Spell Pierce into a Flusterstorm, into a Snapcaster Spell Pierce or Flusterstorm.
Right, and so looks like we're going to be following up the turn 1 Thoughtseize with what I assume is the turn 2 Faithless Looting. Let's see if Jarvis decides to counter this.
So I'm of the opinion that you very aggressively counter the spells that can put things into the graveyard. Not close. Entomb is the best card in this Reanimator deck.
I agree. Because
it's like both a tutor and a way to get things into the graveyard. But if he doesn't have a creature in the graveyard currently, every copy of Reanimate, Animate Dead, Exhume, they are just dead cards. They do nothing.
Ooh, and look at that. Delver of Secrets is going to flip to a Thoughtseize.
Not bad.
What would you take here?
Not the Eleshnorn. That's for sure. The Lotus Petal can allow him to play around some of the soft permission, but the Flusterstorm can deal with that. I think maybe the Animate Dead might be the most threatening card.
Okay.
Because Flusterstorm only hits the instants or sorceries.
Yeah, I know, this is interesting. Like, this is sort of what we see like from the Black-Red Reanimator deck, how it's like super resilient, or it can be super resilient, but there are also like downsides where like you need to have A+B, otherwise you kind of just like sit there for a while doing nothing. I like that Jarvis took the Animate Dead. He can't answer it with the Flusterstorm, so it makes sense to do that there.
In addition, the reanimate is going to get bad very quickly, just after another Delver hit or two.
Correct. That's a good point. But a land off the top means that Bonde can flashback to Faithless Looting here. I imagine Jarvis is going to cast Flusterstorm on the Faithless Looting for two reasons. The first is you want to stay consistent with your game plan. You don't want that Elesh Norn to get in the graveyard, so you want to just be on the denial strategy. Also, you're really bottlenecked on your mana with the Snapcaster Mage being a 3 CMC spell, so casting the Flusterstorm now means you can do it. You can Snapcaster, flashback another spell later on.
Yeah, and the value of having the Flusterstorm in the graveyard so that you can Snapcaster Flusterstorm instead of Snapcaster Spell Pierce is something to consider as well.
Agreed. So, dead draws off the top here for Bonde. I think
this Cabal Therapy himself is to animate an Elesh Norn is currently off the table.
Correct.
He drew some Yu-Gi-Oh card, which I'm guessing is an Entomb.
I think it is an Entomb. And what is that? A Faithless Looting? I saw Turnisphere. Thinking hat. I think he might actually just be dead here, right? Because he can't put the Elesh Norn into play with the cards that he has, unless I'm missing something. But maybe we can just fish for information, because I don't imagine deck lists are public.
Right.
For this segment. Taking the animate dead there was really good. But even if the Elesh Norn came into play, Jarvis still has the Diabolic Edict. Excuse me. To handle it.
Sort of an interesting spot, because what does he entomb if he gets to entomb?
There we go. Faithless Looting. Okay. But Jarvis on the wise, he knows not to let that spell resolve, because Bonde's hand is just dead. So stop it with the Snapcaster, swing for lethal, and game 2 goes to Jarvis U with no surgical extractions against Black-Red Reanimator.
Jarvis's hand was about as good as we could possibly hope him to have.
I agree.
And that's what it takes here.
So let's take a little bit of a look at how Michael sideboarded. I see the Crypt Breakers did not come in. I think he may have boarded out a copy of Cabal Therapy.
We have the Parades coming in to answer Delvers, which makes sense.
And I think he may have boarded out some number of Thoughtseizes, but I could be wrong about that. Or maybe he didn't bring the rest of them in. Either way, it looks like there's minimal adjustment to the Black-Red deck. You want to just maintain that high density of being able to turn one your opponent, smash them through a wall. And let's take a look at these 7s. How is Michael's hand? Oh my God.
Oh man. Unmask into Entomb into Reanimate on turn 1. That seems
filthy. Good. That seems really good. Probably
nice force of will, opponents. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
And so this is a very clear demonstration of the power of Black-Red Reanimator, despite the fact that Jarvis has the best card in his deck on turn 1, Force of Will. He's going to get turn 1. This is just filthy. This is actually disgusting.
So thinking back to the Pro Tour a minute, when the Pro Tour happened, there was an absolutely absurd number of surgical extractions and Leyline of the Voids being registered. It was out of fear of this right here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And, I mean, what Jarvis would give to have a surgical extraction or Leyline here, man, that is just one heck of a start. And so let's see what he entombs for. I imagine it's going to be Gristlebrand. I'd be very surprised if it was anything else. All right, cool. Because when in doubt, just draw cards.
Yeah, when in doubt, Yawgmoth's Will. Or not Yawgmoth's Will, Yawgmoth's Bargain. Sorry, wrong broken card.
So we're going to pay 7 here, go down to some absurdly low life total.
He hasn't played a land yet. He can Cabal Therapy.
Dang. And so if you're Bonde here, you probably therapy away the Brainstorm. I mean, yeah.
Don't let them dig for a Diabolic Edict.
Yeah. And then once you're able to connect once, I think you should be in a very good position. Although I'm not going to lie, The 7 cards that Bonde drew off Griselbrand are not really that good.
No, it's not an impressive hand, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. I mean, 7/7 swinging in, life linking, doing this stuff is. I mean, that's some pretty powerful stuff. Okay, so here he's going to fire off the other Cabal Therapy too. Wonder what he names here. Maybe Flusterstorm. The Thoughtseize doesn't really seem that good.
Yeah, I guess you just take Flusterstorm, but like none of the cards in hand really matter.
Yeah.
This will just like open up some other lines later potentially of like Cabal Therapy, sacrifice my Ashen Rider, blow up one of your lands. There's just like no real downside of doing it.
Looks like game 2 restarted. Hold on. We'll. Okay, can we like fast forward through it maybe, or? Okay, well, bear with us, please, as we once again watch the destruction that will be rained upon Jarvis. Oh man, sorry about that, guys.
So, Anurag, while we're waiting, why don't you tell us about some of the awesome Legacy Premier League sponsors?
Ooh, that's a good idea. So first of all, shout out to my boys at Card Hoarder. Nathaniel has been gracious enough to constantly donate. Oh my God, my dog is like sleeping like this right now. Sorry. Been gracious enough to donate us with a large Magic Online pool, as well as just prize support. They've been giving out raffles and giving to community when they can. Rest in peace, Jarvis. You, by the way. And then also I want to say thank you to our other sponsors, MTG First. Jason runs the best shop I have ever had the luxury of visiting. I think he's got a Quest for Power coming up, or maybe it was this week. I'm not really sure. It's one of the 2 weeks. We'll figure that out later. And then shout out to the Epic Storm and Cardboard.live for their contributions too.
Yeah, so for anyone not familiar with Cardboard.live, the extension that you see on your screen, this little card with like a microphone below its face, that will let you look at the deck lists that our players are currently playing, and that will be updated every round.
Right, and so looking at this, so there's a good point being brought up in the chat, and that's about concessions. And so here's the thing, from Jarvis's perspective, you're probably going to die, and that means, like, given the style of this tournament or this specific match, Grixis Silver gets kicked out, and you have to battle him with a completely new deck. So it's not like there's any like benefit to like hiding information or anything like that. I mean, it's interesting. Bonde has there's no reason for Bonde to concede because he's got a 7/7 lifelinker in play that also draws cards. But yeah, I mean, like, because Jarvis has nothing to lose, I don't think there's anything that you could really gain from, seeing Jarvis's hand. And maybe there's maybe a weird scenario where you can go land into Edict into True Name and then just like beat down for a couple turns. But it's a super narrow corner case, and I think we finally caught up to where we were before, and we're going to see Jarvis with only a True Name and a Thoughtseize left in his repository, probably taking a Braid. I don't think he wants to take the Chancellor.
I think not. That was a non-choice. Yes. So from Jarvis's side, if I were to guess, him playing out another couple of turns here allows him to potentially see some sideboard cards or some of the flex creature options. So for example, we could see Michael go and like Entomb an Ashen Rider a land, and then he would have that information that Ashen Rider is one of the flex slots of the deck.
Exactly. And so I think that's the big thing. So right now, Jarvis stays in the game and doesn't concede, so he can extrapolate more information for the next few games in this best of 5.
Also, if you're 90% dead and you don't have any clock concerns, play out. If you're 95% dead and you still don't have any clock concerns, play out. I've won so many games to my opponent's punting in spectacular ways.
Oh yeah, I've been there too, and that's pretty exciting. So Michael Bonde is going to take game 1. It's kind of, I'm surprised Jarvis actually got game 2. I think he just had a really good hand with just a lot of just a high density of cheap interaction, which is exactly what it needed. He also had the fast clock, but in game 3, Michael just had like the actual literal nuts. And like the only way Jarvis could have won was if he had 2 Force of Wills, which That's asking for a lot. So
statistically unlikely with the 2 blue cards to pair with them as well.
Exactly. So yeah, right. predictions are in. So now moving in, I think Bonde will continue playing Black Red Reanimator. And do we know what